Hey everybody, hope you're doing well this morning. Labor Day, September 4th. Beautiful day out here. Boy, gosh, feels absolutely amazing. You know, it's one of those mornings where you get up and you kind of go outside and you kind of go, hey, the weather is changing. Yay, it's so cool. But happy Labor Day. Hope you're doing well. Welcome to the Morning Devo with Bo. That's right, I am not on a far trip somewhere, just local here today. Got up, missed my time. I was supposed to get up and ride with a friend, but you know how you sometimes set your phone and you could go from PM to AM? Well, and it just flips real quick. Well, it accidentally went to PM instead of AM. And so I missed my wake up time by an hour. So I was kind of bummed at that. But anyway, got on the motorcycle and did a little ride just over the West Mountains, and that was pretty super gorgeous this morning. But great to be in, and we're just going to go through one psalm today. So it's almost like pumping the brakes for us, right? Just going through one psalm, but really cool. I love it that we're in the Psalms and we're kind of flowing through the Bible and just kind of going from book to book and then, kind of going to the next book and doing it. And you really get to learn a lot. I think in the Psalms, you learn not only the amazing songbook of Israel, just as we go through it, because that's what it is, but we get to see its contents, which there's a lot of emotion in the Psalms, and it's like emotion that you never really thought maybe, if you didn't know the Bible, you didn't think you could go to God with. So sometimes we just don't think we can go to God with certain things, and yet we can, and that's certainly what the Psalms kind of tell us. And that's kind of nice to know, because sometimes our hearts are so overwhelmed that it's hard to go to a person. Sometimes a person just can't seem to take in the amount of grief that we might be dealing with. But certainly God can, so it's kind of neat to go upward, and that's kind of the idea of the Psalms, right? Is those that are upright in heart, they're looking up, right? Not so much looking out. So Paula, glad you're in the house. Tina, you're right, fall is in the air, and it's great to have you both in the comment corner already. And let's get into it. Psalm 16 is a big psalm. I mean, not a big, long song, but it's a important psalm. It's a really cool psalm, and it's one that's quoted often. And so I'm going to read from the New Living Translation. It's a little different than what I'm used to, but I kind of like it, and so we'll shoot from there, right? So it's going to be worded a little different than what you might know if you're in a kind of a more, I would say, kind of established version like the NIV or the New King James Version. So it says, "Keep me safe, O God." So it continues with this theme of safety. That's a continual theme in the Psalms, right? Safety. And it's called the Psalm of David. So we know David was a guy who was a military person. So a lot of prayer for safety. And, I think that's kind of neat, right? If you're in the military, it's probably one of your big prayers is a prayer of safety. Keep me safe, O God, for I have come to you for refuge. The heart of David is to move towards God, right? Come to God. Come to God for what? A place of safety, a place of shelter, a place where we can go to and find some rest, a refuge, And so David is pointing himself to God, to the deity. Which is really cool, because a lot of us on the human level just point ourselves to other humans, and that's kind of what we do. We kind of tend to, turn on the TV, look on the news, right? And it's all horizontal. It's all looking at other people, getting on YouTube, instead of really going upward, right? With the way our mind is being conditioned, and David conditioned his mind to look upward. God, I have come to you for refuge. So a big question is always, where are you going for your refuge? Where are you going for your peace? Sometimes it's a bottle, and that's your peace, right? Oh, my peace is, the bottle. Oh, my peace is, the pipe, right? And that's it. And sometimes the peace is, it could be a long ride on a motorcycle, and that's your peace. It could be something else you do, surfing, and that's your peace. But really, the peace that we want ultimately in our life, and where we really want to be directed, is upward, is going up, right? Thinking up, looking up. Because again, if you're not looking up, then pretty much you're looking horizontally, or worse, you're looking down, right? Meaning you're looking down on people. You tend to think maybe you're above everybody, so you just tend to look down, right? And we've all met those kind of people. It's just super prideful, right? Just tend to put people down all the time. It seems like they always knock people, and that's kind of what they seem to do. They can't seem to build people up because they kind of are the only ones up, I said to the Lord, you are my master. That's cool. I said to the Lord, you are my master. That's what people call Jesus, right? Master. Hey, master, right? And David talks about the Yahweh, the Lord, master. You are my master. Every good thing I have comes from you, right? Every good thing I have comes from you. Everything I got, right? It all comes from, every good and perfect gift comes from what? You guys know that passage. Every good and perfect gift comes from what? The Father of lights, in whom there is no shadow of turning, right? Jesus' half-brother says that in the book of James, right? So it's so true, right? Every good and perfect gift comes from God. And David understood that. Every good thing I have comes from you. Really heart of gratitude, a heart of thanksgiving. Are you thankful this morning? What are you thankful for? Why? It's a good thing to think about. And it says, the godly people in the land are my true heroes. I take pleasure in them. David talks about his pleasure. Man, he finds a good vibe, when he thinks about those people that are awesome. People that he really looks up to. Meaning, he not only looks up to, of course, God ultimately, but he finds a lot of joy in looking up to people that he sees that are jamming, doing well. He loves their character. He loves, things about them. And that's kind of neat, I think we all need people to, want to emulate or be like, or, have as mentors in our life. And that's an important part of just growing and even getting older, is having people in our life. I think of a sister, an elderly sister who just passed away, of a friend of mine. And I think, gosh, what a mentor she was to so many people, even myself. Just hearing her and being around her, and during the different situations in her life, those are all really important, and they all are real teaching moments. I don't know if you are able to see how other people affect you, and how they can bless you, and how you can learn from them. Or are you so wrapped up maybe in just your own mind that you're not looking at, how people are mentoring you, or the blessing of people that do good things, And sometimes people are so wrapped up in bad things, like thinking about bad things, constantly on the negative, that they can't even see the positive, even if it's right before them. And that's a bummer. David says, man, I take pleasure in those people that I look up to, right? And that are my heroes. I love that. It says, troubles multiply for those who chase after other gods. I will not take part in their sacrifices of blood, or even speak the names of their gods. So it's kind of, Paul, I think, picks up on this idea in the New Testament book of Corinthians, where he talks about, what does light have with darkness, and this kind of idea, what is, the sacrifices of the pagans have with, basically the righteous worship, of the true and living God. And he kind of picks up this contrast that you see a lot in the Psalms, right? Where King David says, hey, like, I'm not going to take part in their sacrifices or even speak in their name, right? I'm not even going to share. Even Paul in the New Testament alludes to that idea, is that we don't even want to share what people do, right, in secret. This kind of idea of I don't even want to be named. I don't want to be even thought of as speaking of that kind of thing. Very interesting, right? It's the idea, of course, of wanting to stay at a distance from. Some people might take it kind of legalistically, and they're like, don't you say that. Don't you say it. It says don't say things that are done in secret. Don't say that. Some people take that literally, like, and I think there's a literal kind of idea there, but it points to really a state of mind, of just wanting to stay at a distance towards things that are not beneficial in Christ, that aren't going to bear, right, the fruits of righteousness. Kind of stay away from that. And that's cool. Is that my heart? Do I want to stay away from that? Do I want to have a distance from certain things? So David mentions that. Lord, you alone are my inheritance, my cup of blessing. Oh man, now he starts thinking about God, and he goes, you alone are my inheritance. That's kind of an cool idea, inheritance. I don't think we've mentioned that too much, especially in the Psalms so far. But this idea of inheritance, if you do just a study on that word, you're going to come up with some really cool things, especially in the New Testament with that. And here David says, hey, God, you alone are my inheritance. Man, that's kind of the idea. A lot of times we think of money, things like that when we get an inheritance. But, God is your inheritance. Getting God, having God with you. Man, that's intense. Having God in you. Wow. I mean, that is the inheritance. What a blessing that is. And you can't go any higher than God. So logically speaking, it totally makes sense that if your inheritance was something other than the Lord, then there would be something else that's really better, maybe, But King David realizes that you can't go any higher than God. God is the greater. And so to say, hey, God is my inheritance, that's the highest of highs. And that's cool that he saw things that way. Do I see that God is everything and that there's no limitation with God? He is the infinity, if you will, and that he's able to give you everything you need and even more. And that's the beauty with God. He even gives us more, gives us himself. And boy, that's a lot there. There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of love, incredible compassion with the Lord. His mercies are new every morning, so we know great is his mercy. And he gives us all that, So that's kind of cool. I love inheriting his mercy. I love inheriting his grace. I love inheriting, right, his righteousness. You go on down the list and you go, man, that's a pretty awesome thing to inherit, He says, my cup of blessing. The idea of drinking something, right? Oh, having a drink. The nourishment, right? The taste, right? You are my cup of blessing. You're the thing that tastes good, God. You're the thing that's awesome. And I kind of like that because God is an intimate God, and David talks about God in intimate ways. You're the cup of my blessing, man. You're my nutrition. You're the thing that tastes sweet, That's cool. A lot of people don't look at God that way, by the way. They kind of see God much kind of in a bitter way, and kind of a bummed out way. They don't see God as so providing for you, so helping you, that you see God as sweet. Says, you guard all that is mine. God is guarding. That's great to understand too, right? That God is the one who guards us. The land you have given me is a pleasant land. What a wonderful inheritance. Maybe I need to learn how to trust that God is able to guard He's able to guard, take care of, protect. And sometimes we don't see that in this world. We see instead murder and strife and the horrible things that go on. And we go, where's God? A lot of people ask that. But David seems to say that God guards this inheritance, that God is with you, and that God will see you through, and that God has given you his mercy, he's given you his grace, he's given you these things. Now, these are things that people can't take away from you, right? They can take away your house and your home, and just like Job, we went through that book of Job. Things could get taken away, there's no doubt about it, and we could suffer loss, but we will not lose inheritance. We will not lose that God's mercy, God's grace, is on us. It is in us. His righteousness. We're clothed with his righteousness. These things will not be taken away from us. What a wonderful inheritance, right? And it says, I will bless the Lord who guides me, even at night. My heart instructs me. Kind of nice peaceful idea, right? At night, I'm being kind of instructed, guidance from the Lord. When it's quiet, hopefully you got some quiet time to think about how God's instructing you. I know the Lord is always with me. I will not be shaken, for he is right beside me. Isn't that cool? He's right there with me all the time. God is right there with me. Man, such a cool idea to have that kind of God conscience, right there beside you. And the New Testament goes further and says God is in you. Ooh, that's pretty radical as well. The Spirit of God can be with you, upon you, and in you. Very interesting relationships. David knew this. David lived this way, with this idea that God is with him. Do you feel distant from God? Sometimes we have to go, hey, who actually moved? Was it me? Because God is right there beside you. No wonder my heart is glad and I rejoice. My body rests in safety, for you will not leave my soul among the dead. Wow. God will not leave David's soul in the dead. God is with him. God has given him inheritance. He trusts that God is going to be with them no matter what. He says, and he rejoices, right? He has great joy. His heart is glad. His body rests, right? And he will not allow his Holy One to see decay or corruption or death, the grave, right? Very cool passage. The Holy One will not see this ultimate fate of all people, right? The idea of remaining in the grave. And that's kind of a neat statement. It's a real prophetic statement, don't you think? You might even be able to find this passage in the New Testament somewhere and see how they looked at this passage. But it's kind of interesting, right? King David says, you're not going to allow your Holy One to see corruption, to see decay. Very interesting. Now, did King David decay? Did his body decay? Yeah, it did, right? But there's another person in the line of King David. Remember that son that we're waiting for from Judah, from that line of Judah? That line of King David? He's going to be a king forever, right? We know that from just reading through the Bible already. Very early on in the Bible, we've been promised a son that's going to take care of the problem that happened with Adam and Eve and their separation from the deity. And we've been waiting for that son for a long time. Well, here in the Psalm, we see a real hint that the Holy One, the one who is truly holy, isn't going to see decay. And so now for those of us who know our New Testament, we know that Jesus rose from the dead in a moment in history. And this is the event that King David is actually sharing about. Now, does King David know that? I don't know. But certainly the New Testament writers totally picked up on it. And they understood that the Holy One is the actual Messiah, this son that would be born from the Davidic line. You might have heard of that. David's line, the Davidic line of Judah. So very cool, and by the way, this is the promise that's to us too. For those in Christ, our bodies will one day be raised as well. Very cool. For you will not leave my soul in corruption amongst the grave. You will show me the way of life. Wow. Kind of all the way like Job knew. Remember Job back in the day, 1,000 years before David, knew that there would be a resurrection, that he would see God on the earth. It was just amazing how Job understood this already. And so David says, you're going to show me the path of life, the way of life. Wow. I tell you what, there's no life like resurrected life. And that's got to be life and life indeed. And so there's life of what we know now, but what we know now has a lot of decay in it. Everything that is born dies. Everything's dying. Everything's moving in that direction. But God's got a way of life. Isn't that cool? And when you give your life to Jesus, you start that way of life. And that's something to be super thankful for this morning. That we're on the path to the way of life. I love that. He has shown us the way of life. Jesus is that life. He is the way, the truth, and the life. It says, you will show me the way of life, granting me the joy of your presence. Whoa, gifting me, granting me, gracing me with the joy of your presence. That's cool, man. There's a lot of people, a lot of us have joy in a lot of other things, but the joy of God's presence, there's nothing like it. After a rough week, you can go into church sometimes and just worship the Lord, and it'd be super sweet, right? Just knowing the Lord's presence with you as you worship, maybe have some tears under the Lord. But that joy of His presence and the pleasures of living with you forever. Love that ending, right? And the pleasures. See, Psalm 16 is about really the right direction of our pleasures. I love that. Our pleasures can really be wrapped up in God, that we find God enjoyable, that we find God pleasurable. And this is really important, because can anything be worshipped if it's not enjoyed? It's a question, can anything be worshipped if it's not enjoyed? If someone says, oh, I really love my wife, but you don't enjoy your wife? Right? You don't have pleasure in your wife? I would really doubt what that person's saying. Our joy and our pleasure shows the direction of what we find worthy of worship, if I could say. And that's so cool about this psalm, right? Is a lot of people forget that God is a God to find pleasure in, to find joy in, and that God is a pleasurable being. And God designs us to experience pleasure and joy. This is so different from how so many people relate to God. So many people do not see God as a pleasurable being. They do not know that they could have joy and pleasure in God. But the pleasures of living with you forever is King David's heart. The pleasures. Man, pleasure is awesome. It's enjoyable, right? And it's like, a lot of us don't like things that cause a lot of pain. We're not too into that. We understand there's a place for pain, but we're not too into that, especially forever, And so pleasurable has an important part in our species, in our creation, in our makeup. And instead of finding pleasure in all these other things, and that being so valuable, we have to start learning how to direct our joy and our pleasure to the greater, and that greater is God. That He is the ultimate pleasure, the ultimate joy. And there's a lot of reasons why people struggle with this. And I'm not going to go into that right now. But I find it absolutely beautiful and so fascinating that, when Jesus was being baptized, it says that the Father spoke, "This is my beloved Son," right? The Son we're waiting for, "in whom I am well pleased." I take pleasure in the Son. The Father has pleasure in the Son. The Son has pleasure in the Father. Man, they enjoy one another. Beautiful, intimate fellowship. And that is cool. They're safe. They do the right things. And that makes things, especially people, enjoyable when they're safe, right? And they love, and they have companionship and compassion, and people walk humbly and with a lot of mercy and forgiveness. It makes people enjoyable to be around, right? But pride and arrogance and envy and strife, right? And bragging and all this stuff, that's not really that fun to be around, But God is the ultimate of those right things. And so He's the ultimate pleasure to partake of. So very cool psalm. And I hope you guys enjoy it, and you guys continue to kind of go over it today a little bit. It's absolutely gorgeous. And I love actually the New King James rendering of this passage, just so you know. I think the NIV and the New King James, I even like theirs better than this New Living Translation. But that's okay. I enjoy this one. It's very cool as well. But this is a great psalm, one to really focus on. You can see how David is a person who is a man after God's own heart, in the sense of God really wanting to draw close, really seeing really honed in that his joy and his pleasure was really focused upward and not outward. It really was God and God alone who really moved his heart. And he really had that alone time to be able to just go, God, you are the best. And that is awesome. What a treasure. So you guys have a great Labor Day, and enjoy it. Talk to you later. Bye-bye.